There is a quiet shift happening in the world right now, and most people can feel it even if they cannot yet explain it. For centuries, humanity has been trained to believe that reality is primarily material. What you can touch is real. What you can measure is truth. What you can accumulate is power. So naturally, we built our entire civilization around material evidence. Wealth was defined by possessions. Success was defined by status. Intelligence was defined by measurable achievement. Entire systems of education, business, and culture were designed around this assumption that the physical world is the deepest layer of reality. But something subtle has begun to change. More and more people are sensing that there is another layer beneath what we can see. A layer that cannot always be measured but can always be felt. Two rooms may look identical in design, yet one feels peaceful while the other feels strangely heavy. Two people may say the exact same words, yet one brings clarity while the other leaves tension behind. Two opportunities may appear equal on paper, yet one expands your life while the other slowly drains your energy. Why does this happen? Because life does not only respond to physical form. Life responds to frequency. And this realization marks the beginning of a profound transformation in human awareness. We are slowly moving from a civilization that worships material form into a civilization that begins to recognize energy as the deeper architecture of reality. Not energy as a trendy buzzword, not energy as a vague spiritual slogan, but energy as a direct lived experience that people are beginning to perceive more clearly than ever before. Think about how often you have walked into a room and immediately sensed the atmosphere without anyone speaking. Think about the times when you met someone and felt trust instantly or discomfort instantly, long before any logical explanation appeared. Your body knew something before your mind could analyze it. That is energy perception. For a long time, humanity dismissed these sensations as imagination or emotional exaggeration. But science itself is now beginning to confirm what ancient traditions quietly understood for thousands of years. Everything that appears solid is actually vibrating fields of energy. Matter itself is not as solid as it seems. At the most fundamental level, what we call matter is simply organized vibration. This realization changes everything. Because if energy precedes form, then the invisible structures beneath life become more important than the visible structures on the surface. The state of your mind begins to matter. The coherence of your emotions begins to matter. The clarity of your intentions begins to matter. Your nervous system, your presence, your attention, your honesty with yourself all begin to influence the environment around you in ways that are subtle but incredibly powerful. And suddenly, the old definition of wealth begins to look incomplete. For generations, people believed that wealth was simply what you owned. But in an energy-aware world, wealth becomes something very different. Wealth becomes what you radiate. Can your presence calm a chaotic room? Can your words bring clarity instead of confusion? Can your work carry a living sense of purpose rather than empty performance? Can your body hold vitality rather than collapsing under constant pressure and stress? This is a different kind of currency, a currency that cannot be printed, borrowed, or faked for very long. Because energy always reveals itself over time. Someone may appear successful on the outside, yet their energy tells a completely different story. Their body is exhausted, their nervous system is unstable, their relationships feel transactional, and their inner life is filled with tension. In contrast, another person may not possess enormous wealth by traditional standards, yet when they walk into a space, something changes. The atmosphere softens. Conversations deepen. People feel more grounded in their presence. This is the difference between material success and energetic coherence. And right now, humanity is slowly waking up to this difference. This is why many of the old systems are beginning to crack under pressure. Systems built purely on appearances cannot sustain themselves in a world that is becoming more sensitive to energy. For a long time, societies could be guided by image, authority, and surface-level power. But today, people are beginning to sense authenticity in ways they could not before. They are no longer satisfied with polished appearances that hide inner disconnection. They want alignment. They want truth. They want presence. They want coherence between what is said and what is felt. And this is why the next era will not simply belong to those who know how to build structures in the physical world. It will belong to those who understand how to regulate and align their inner energy. people who can calm their nervous systems. In chaos, people who can act from clarity instead of reaction. People who can maintain emotional integrity even under pressure. Because the world ahead will not be shaped only by technology or strategy. It will be shaped by consciousness, by the invisible fields of intention, emotion, and awareness that surround every action we take. And this shift is already happening quietly around us. Some people feel confused by it because they were trained for a purely material world. They were taught to chase outcomes, control circumstances, and compete endlessly for external validation. But the deeper question emerging now is no longer, what do you have? The deeper question is, what are you carrying? Because what you carry enters the room before your words do. It shapes your relationships before promises are spoken. It influences your children before lessons are taught. It shapes your reality before evidence appears. And this is where the great transition of our time begins. Not merely upgrading our technology, but upgrading our awareness. Something profound begins to happen the moment you start seeing life through the lens of energy rather than only through the lens of matter. At first, the shift is subtle. You simply begin to notice things that once escaped your attention. You notice how certain conversations leave you feeling expanded while others quietly drain your vitality. You notice how certain environments restore your mind while others create tension in your body without any obvious reason. You notice that some people bring clarity wherever they go while others bring confusion even when they appear successful or confident on the surface. These are not random impressions. They are energetic signals. For most of modern history, humanity trained its intelligence almost exclusively on the visible layer of reality. We learned how to build structures, measure performance, engineer machines, and analyze data. All of this created incredible technological progress, but it also left one dimension of life largely unexplored, the invisible field of human energy and consciousness. And now that dimension is becoming impossible to ignore. Think about the way a single person can change the emotional atmosphere of an entire room. Sometimes a calm and centered individual enters a chaotic environment, and slowly the room settles. People begin speaking more thoughtfully. Reactions soften. The nervous system of the group unconsciously synchronizes with the stability of that one person. But the opposite can also happen. One anxious or agitated person can quietly spread tension across an entire group. Words might remain polite, but something underneath becomes tight and uneasy. What you are witnessing in these moments is energetic regulation. Human beings constantly influence one another through subtle signals carried in tone, posture, breath rhythm, eye contact, and emotional state. Long before language appears, the body is already communicating. Your nervous system is always reading the nervous systems of the people around you. This means that leadership in the future will not be defined only by strategy or authority. It will be defined by energetic coherence, the ability to remain grounded in the middle of uncertainty, the ability to regulate your own emotions so they do not unconsciously dominate the environment around you, the ability to bring clarity where there is confusion. This is why many people are feeling an unusual kind of exhaustion in the modern world. It is not only physical fatigue, it is energetic overload. We live surrounded by constant stimulation, news, social media, competition, noise, pressure to perform, pressure to respond, pressure to compare. The human nervous system was never designed to process this level of continuous input. As a result, many people are living in a permanent state of low-grade stress without even realizing it. Their bodies remain tense. Their attention becomes fragmented. Their emotional reactions become quicker and less stable. When energy awareness begins to awaken, one of the first realizations people experience is that protecting their inner state becomes essential, not as an act of withdrawal from life, but as an act of conscious participation in it. Because if your internal state is chaotic, everything you create externally will carry that chaos. If your internal state is clear, your actions naturally become more aligned and effective. This is why ancient traditions placed such importance on practices that stabilize attention and regulate energy: meditation, breath work, contemplation, silence, prayer. For a long time, these practices were dismissed as mystical or impractical. But now neuroscience and psychology are rediscovering their importance. They train the nervous system to return to balance. They create space between stimulus and reaction. They allow a human being to respond consciously rather than simply reacting automatically. And this ability will become one of the most valuable forms of intelligence in the decades ahead. Because the next stage of civilization will not only require faster technology, it will require more stable human consciousness. Without inner regulation, powerful technologies simply amplify human confusion. But when inner clarity develops, those same technologies can become tools for meaningful progress. The transition from a material-only worldview to an energy-aware worldview also changes how we approach relationships. In the old paradigm, relationships were often built around roles, expectations, and external compatibility. But as energetic sensitivity increases, people begin searching for resonance instead of appearance. They look for emotional honesty. They look for people whose presence feels aligned rather than merely impressive. They notice whether conversations leave them feeling nourished or subtly depleted. Because energy cannot be hidden forever. Over time, every relationship reveals its true energetic structure. Some connections help both people grow. Others slowly erode vitality through constant tension, competition, or emotional inconsistency. When people become aware of this dynamic, they begin making different choices. They stop chasing connections based purely on image or status. They start valuing calmness, sincerity, and emotional stability. This is not a rejection of the material world. It is an integration of deeper awareness into it. Businesses will also change under this shift. For decades, many companies focused almost entirely on efficiency, profit, and measurable output. But organizations are now beginning to realize that culture, emotional safety, and trust dramatically influence performance. A workplace where people feel respected and psychologically secure generates creativity and collaboration. A workplace driven by fear and pressure slowly destroys motivation and innovation. Again, this is the language of energy. The invisible environment determines the quality of the visible outcome. Even the way we communicate begins to transform under this awareness. Words themselves carry energy. A sentence spoken with genuine presence feels completely different from the same sentence spoken mechanically. The meaning may be identical, but the impact is not. People intuitively feel whether someone is speaking from authenticity or simply repeating information. This is why the future will reward those who cultivate congruence between their inner state and their outer expression. When thought, emotion, and action align, a human being becomes trustworthy at a very deep level. And trust will become one of the most valuable resources in an increasingly complex world. Slowly, humanity is beginning to rediscover something that ancient wisdom traditions always emphasized. Reality is not shaped only by what we do, but by the state from which we do it. Action matters. Strategy matters. But the consciousness behind the action matters even more. This realization marks the next stage of human development. We are not leaving the material world behind. We are simply recognizing that matter is not the deepest layer of existence. Beneath every structure lies a field of intention, awareness, and energy shaping how that structure behaves. And the more sensitive we become to that field, the more consciously we can participate in shaping our lives and our societies. The great question emerging now is no longer simply, how do we control the world? The deeper question is, how do we align ourselves with the intelligence that already moves through it? Because when alignment appears, effort begins to feel different. Life becomes less about forcing outcomes and more about cooperating with deeper patterns that were always present. This is the awakening many people are beginning to sense even if they cannot yet fully describe it. It is not a sudden revolution. It is a gradual remembering that human beings are not merely physical machines moving through a mechanical universe. We are conscious participants in a living field of energy, perception, and meaning. And as that understanding grows, the way we live, relate, create, and lead will continue to evolve in ways we are only beginning to imagine. And this is where the real transformation begins, not in the outer world, but inside the structure of human awareness. Because once you begin to see life through the lens of energy, you cannot return to living unconsciously the way you once did. You start noticing the invisible architecture beneath everything. You begin to sense the emotional climate behind conversations. You begin to recognize the intentions hidden beneath actions. You begin to understand that every choice carries a vibration that echoes far beyond the immediate moment. This realization changes how you move through life in ways that are both subtle and profound. You become more attentive to the quality of your presence. You become more careful about the environments you spend time in. You begin asking different questions. Not just, is this opportunity profitable, but does this opportunity expand or contract my energy? Not just, is this relationship impressive, but does this relationship nourish my nervous system or exhaust it? Not just, how fast can I achieve results, but what kind of state am I cultivating while pursuing those results? Because over time you begin to realize something remarkable, the state from which you act eventually shapes the results you experience. Actions born from clarity create very different outcomes than actions born from fear. Decisions made from calm awareness carry a different trajectory than decisions made under pressure and inner conflict. This does not mean life suddenly becomes effortless or free of challenge. Challenges are still part of growth. But your relationship with those challenges changes dramatically. Instead of reacting impulsively, you begin responding with greater awareness. Instead of trying to force life into submission, you begin learning how to cooperate with deeper patterns unfolding around you. This is the moment when energy awareness matures into wisdom, because wisdom is not merely information. Wisdom is the ability to perceive the invisible dynamics shaping visible reality. And when enough individuals begin cultivating that perception, society itself begins to evolve. Consider how leadership changes under this perspective. In the past, many leaders gained influence through authority, dominance, or control. But in a world becoming increasingly sensitive to energy, those strategies gradually lose effectiveness. People can feel the tension behind manipulation. They can sense the instability behind forced authority. The future will increasingly favor leaders who embody coherence rather than control. Leaders whose words align with their actions. Leaders whose nervous systems remain steady in times of uncertainty. Leaders who create environments where others feel psychologically safe enough to contribute their creativity and intelligence. This is not weakness. It is a deeper form of strength. Because true leadership is not about overpowering people. It is about stabilizing the field in which people operate so their highest capacities can emerge. The same principle applies to parenting, relationships, and even personal creativity. When parents regulate their own emotional states, children naturally feel safer exploring the world. When partners cultivate emotional honesty, relationships deepen beyond superficial performance. When artists create from authentic presence rather than external validation, their work begins to resonate more deeply with others. Energy awareness transforms every domain of human life because it shifts attention from surface-level appearances to underlying coherence. And perhaps the most important realization within this shift is understanding that energy is not something mystical or reserved for a select few. It is simply the living expression of your state of being. Your thoughts generate emotional patterns. Your emotions influence your physiology. Your physiology shapes the signals your nervous system sends into the environment. Every human being is constantly broadcasting and receiving these signals, whether they are aware of it or not. The difference is awareness. When you become conscious of this process, you gain the ability to participate in it intentionally rather than unconsciously. You begin learning how to return your attention to the present moment instead of being carried away by habitual mental noise. You begin recognizing when fear is distorting your perception. You begin pausing before reacting, allowing clarity to emerge before action. These small shifts accumulate over time, gradually transforming how you experience reality itself. And slowly you begin to notice that life feels different. Situations that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. Conflicts that once escalated now dissolve through calm communication. Opportunities begin appearing that align more naturally with your authentic direction. This is not because the universe suddenly changed its rules. It is because your perception of the invisible dynamics guiding your life has become more refined. The deeper truth emerging from this transition is that the future will not be shaped only by technological innovation or economic power. It will also be shaped by the evolution of human consciousness. A civilization that understands energy becomes more capable of creating systems based on trust rather than fear, collaboration rather than domination, creativity rather than survival anxiety. And that evolution begins with individuals willing to examine their own inner state with honesty. Because every transformation in the external world begins as a transformation in awareness. Every culture is ultimately a reflection of the collective energy of the people within it. This means the next stage of human progress is not simply about building smarter machines. It is about becoming wiser humans. Humans capable of regulating their emotions rather than being ruled by them. Humans capable of perceiving deeper patterns rather than reacting only to surface appearances. Humans capable of aligning intention, action, and presence into a coherent force for growth. We are not leaving the material world behind. We are learning to understand it more deeply by recognizing the energetic foundation beneath it. And once you see that foundation, you begin to realize something empowering. Your inner state matters far more than you were ever taught. The way you speak matters. The way you think matters. The way you treat others matters. Because all of these actions shape the energetic field through which your life unfolds. So the question gradually shifts from, how can I control everything around me, to how can I cultivate the clarity within me? And perhaps this is the most important invitation of our time, to slow down just enough to notice the subtle signals of life, to develop the awareness necessary to choose presence instead of unconscious reaction, to recognize that the energy you carry is shaping your reality every moment whether you realize it or not. If these ideas resonate with something deep inside you, take a moment and reflect on your own experience. Have you ever walked into a place and instantly felt the atmosphere change? Have you ever met someone whose presence felt calming even before they spoke? Share your experience in the comments below. Conversations like these help more people become aware of the invisible forces shaping their lives. And if you found value in this exploration, support the journey by liking this video and subscribing to The Inner Code, where we continue exploring consciousness, awareness, and the deeper intelligence behind human experience. Because the more we understand the unseen dimensions of life, the more intentionally we can shape the world we live in. Thank you for being here. And remember, before you say a word, before you take a single action, your energy has already spoken.